Welcome to Full Stream Ahead, a new standard of viewing. I'm Kaylee Adamitz. I'm the director of the CTA Executive Office. And today we're here to talk about how we're in a moment of time where consolidation, new subscription models, and evolving consumer behaviors are reshaping what streaming even means. Before we dive in, let's take a moment to introduce our panelists. Shalini, I'll have you go first.
Yeah, hi, I'm Shalini. I lead up Google TV, which is the #1 streaming platform worldwide. Prior to this, I was at YouTube, where I helped grow our audience base and our creator base more than tenfold. And then previously, I was at Pixar Animation. So I've been very much involved always in media, but really thinking about the merger of tech and media and how does that really bring delightful moments to consumers.
Wonderful. Next up is Kevin.
Hi everybody, Kevin Beatty. I've been building products, consumer products globally for 20 years. I am the head of product for Samsung for our visual display group. So that is building products and experiences across our visual displays such as TVs, projectors, monitors, all of those things. And prior to that came from Disney. And so we can catch up on our old cast member days. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Wonderful. Bart, you're up next.
Yep. Bart Spiegel. I'm a partner at PwC based in New York in our mergers and acquisitions practice. I've been there for about 30 years and I currently lead our global entertainment and media practice, and I also lead our global TMT M&A practice. So spend a lot of my time traveling the world, just meeting with different folks and executing on all different sized M&A transactions that really are just transforming the industry right now.
Hi, I'm John Dick, CEO of CivicScience, consumer data and analytics platform that we use to power advertising and measurement across digital, online video, CTV. Thank you all for being here. I can only assume most of you stayed up for this. So.
Yeah, I'm so impressed, all of you that are here. My name is Peter Hamilton. I'm the head of ad innovation at Roku. Roku is a streaming television company, and we're in half of American households. I lead efforts across advertising that exists in our home screen, interactive advertising, our self-service ad platform, our managed service ad tech stacks, and all kinds of strategy and operations stuff. So thank you.
Great. We're in for a great panel today. Thanks, everyone. Let's get started by talking about the viewer. Ultimately, everything in streaming comes back to how people are really using their TVs. So Kevin, I want to talk to you first. How do you think about streaming services and the core TV experience across content, gaming, and connected devices?
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously seen this massive evolution where 10 years ago you would buy a TV and the first thing you'd have to do is you'd have to buy something to connect to it. Either a dongle or a streaming equipment of some sort, cable box. Now every single TV you buy out of the box has every streaming app that you would expect. And so consumers have this massive sea of just unlimited content that they can watch. And I think where a lot of the TV manufacturers, and specifically Samsung, are focused right now is how do you cut through all of that? And how do you really provide a discovery engine where the right content can find the right user at the right time? At the operating level, we see how long it takes for viewers to actually find something to consume across every single app. And it's an astonishing number. And so we're constantly trying to figure out how do we improve discovery so that users can find the right content for them. And then the other thing that's really been a big surge in terms of viewing hours on TV is gaming. And so, over the last 5 years, all of the major gaming companies have actually started to bring cloud stream gaming to the market. And so that allows people to play AAA games on their TV without needing a console. And so when you think about the hours viewed on a TV, yeah, they're streaming content of videos and movies, but they're also playing a lot as well.
Yeah, it's a fully immersive experience. Shalini, how does AI influence recommendations and discovery on this biggest screen inside the home?
Yeah, to your point, I think, when I first started on Google TV about 6 years ago, one of the biggest things that we heard from viewers, talking about the viewer experience, was, streaming is really great. Like, wow, we have so much content, and AI is actually going to create a lot more content. And so this is wonderful. It's the era of streaming content, but it's so much. I'm so lost in the sea of content. I don't really know what to watch. And really that was the premise with which we built the foundations of Google TV, which is less time searching, more time watching. And Google is really a search and discovery platform, and so if anyone can do it, we should be able to do it. And so that was the premise with which we started Google TV, the experience that really brings out how can I bring personalized content to people so that they don't have to think about which app, what do I open, even within the app, like where do I find this content? How can we really help provide that content proactively in front of them? And so that's the experience that if any of you have seen Google TV is what we provide. It is very much based on AI and machine learning dynamics, really thinking through all the factors of like how do people watch TV, what is the time of day, what is it the weekend, are they watching with their families? These are all the factors that we bring in. And now with with LLM technology, this is getting even more hypercharged. Where you can actually say things like, what we were demoing in our booth the other day was, hey, I just finished watching Severance, what else would you recommend to me? And LLMs can really do a really great job thinking through what are the factors that really made Severance or Silo such an interesting content, and then what more can I recommend based on my world knowledge. So we've already done a really fabulous job in terms of recommendations, and I think the next era is going to be even more turbocharged, and it has to be because content is even more and more an ocean.
Yeah. And people are looking for personalization. Peter, from your perspective, how has the relationship between the viewer and the platform evolved?
Well, it's really interesting. We see that viewers on Roku are moving across many different apps, right? So in 2025, the average was 9 different apps that they're streaming from. We're also seeing that the average user downloaded 4 new apps and also dropped or stopped subscribing in 4 apps also. And that's mind-blowing to me, really. People are not finding everything they want from any one provider. And so who is going to be the one to bring the right content, into focus and to help them find that, discover it? And so there are many different ways that we can pursue that, of course, through our home screen. And just like was mentioned, at Google, like we're all trying to create, a better way to traverse all of these apps and discover and find things as quickly as we can. The other thing that's really changed, and I'm not sure I really would have predicted this, even though I'm in advertising, is that 3 of those 9 apps that they view in the year were fully ad-supported apps. And wildly enough, like on the Roku platform, 96% of viewers at some point were seeing video ads on their device through some service of some type. Nielsen says it's 74% of all viewers in streaming are seeing some form of video ad. And so this concept that everything was going to disappear behind paywalls and that it was all going to be subscription services, and I was like on board with that. I fully believed it, honestly. I like making money with ads, but I also like to just binge watch and stream the content I love. But viewers are starting to see that the costs are just continuing to rack up, and they want to be able to turn on something and just let it run. And AVOD or advertising VOD has really, created that opportunity.
That's great. We're going to touch a little bit more on ad-supported content in a minute. Before that, John, can you just talk to us about the data with how viewers are actually engaging on their TV screen and any data points you want to hit based on the news?
We could go a lot of different directions with this. So I think it's helpful to kind of contextualize. All of this stuff happens in a framework of where the consumer mindset is at the moment, right? And we look at kind of a combination of like financial state of the consumer down at the household level, and even like emotional state, which is really powerful right now. And we've got these 2 sort of like countervailing forces, right, of sort of like economic headwinds, or at least the sense of the feeling of economic headwinds hitting consumers that are making them more discerning about how many services am I going to use, is it going to be AVOD versus paid. And then on the other side, you've got like the emotional state of the consumer right now, which is very kind of fraught, right? And so they're really, like, we look at what different things people are doing to kind of improve their kind of self-care. Binge watching television is at the top of that list. It's bigger than eating healthy or exercising, right? Like it's the thing that people are leaning into to kind of fill like emotional voids in their life, right? And that's impacting not just sort of how many services or what services they subscribe to, but even down to like what shows they want to watch, right? The perfect example of that was like why Ted Lasso was so successful when it was successful, because of where the people were looking for something comforting, and we were in COVID and all the sort of political environment at that time. So we're just seeing a lot of the same things now. We're seeing popularity of like conspiratorial content right now because, from both sides, there's just
I wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's just kind of understanding like what those sort of macro forces are, that when this is what we try to tell all of our, advertising partners and platform partners, is like really to understand that sort of emotional state of the consumer, because we see it in spades across like every touch point of the industry.
Sure. Bart, we're talking about a lot of shifts in the industry. How would you compare it to earlier changes that we've seen in media consumption?
Yeah, you'd probably have to go back to when cable first came out, right? And when cable first came out, the power really resided, in my mind, with the cable companies. And so, it brought a whole new change of business models, different ways of consuming content. There's just a lot more content than obviously just the traditional networks. And so when you think about that, and you think about like what we're dealing with now, I think that the streaming platforms that exist, the power's now switching to the consumer. And if you think about legacy, like your legacy cable subscription, it was impossible to cancel it. You'd be on hold for five hours. Changing packages was very challenging. There was never transparency around pricing. And so it just made it very cumbersome, like clunky, I guess I would say. And so now with streaming platforms, the switching costs are de minimis. And so as a streaming provider, you really need to make sure you've got compelling content, you've got a compelling price point, solutions, AVOD, SVOD, whatever it is, or some mix of that, for to drive that customer engagement. And that's why when we're doing in the world of mergers and acquisitions, we're constantly looking at subscriber churn, ARPU, DAU, everything, just to see what's happening, because of the fickleness of the consumer. There's no switching costs. And so it's incumbent on the streaming platforms to make sure that they're providing solutions that are very well received by the customer, because they could just jump ship at any time.
I'll add a quick stat to that. I was just looking at this last night. Almost 40% of households now have canceled a platform and resubscribed to it. Yeah. So it's not necessarily like a one-way street any longer. It's just so easy to kind of flop back and forth. It's happening a lot.
Yeah. Well, and with live sports, people will subscribe just for the game and literally churn for the following month. And so, what do you do if that's like your mainstay, right? You have to figure out, okay, we're going to keep people coming back through some other kind of content. They really just came for that one game. That's a really hard nut to crack for folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Touching quickly on M&A, John, to consumers, does this feel like simplification or confusion or something else? We're seeing a lot of this going on, so I just want to quickly touch on that.
Well, I mean, I forget who it was talking about sort of the discovery problem, right? It's like, I don't know where this, I sit down on a Sunday to watch a football game, and I have to, I don't know which of the 7 services I have to look to watch it. So that, yes, the consumer's getting fatigue with that. It does feel like consolidation and bundling is inevitable at some point, even if it's just at the search and infrastructure level, because there's a lot of that. It's the switching cost thing is, I know from a business standpoint, it's problematic. For the consumer, it's wonderful. The biggest drag, I think, on the consumer is in the streaming universe is just the complexity of all the different services. It's not one guide and one platform I have to. So that problem's going to have to be solved, and it's probably inevitable that it will be.
Yeah, it seems like it's already begun. People are actively thinking about this. Let's move on and back to advertising. It's become a major driver of innovation in streaming. So, Peter, I want to start with you. How are tools like Ad Manager enabling smaller businesses to be creative and effective with TV?
Well, television advertising has been historically very expensive, only for really the richest advertisers. The planning cycles were long. In fact, you're planning things over a year through the upfront process. Oftentimes, campaigns were, launched at least a quarter in advance and then run for an entire quarter with the same creative, and then maybe get your results back a quarter after that, which is just an insane turnaround in the digital age where we're used to buying advertising in search and social and see immediate impacts, immediate results, being able to do optimization on the fly. And so, we launched Roku Ads Manager certainly to mimic the buying method of search and social. So it feels very familiar. There's also, no threshold, right? So no minimum commitment. You just put a credit card on file just like you would in search and social, and you just can upload your video creative and start running ads. And so, we're trying to make it a first-class platform that also has, full-fledged API integrated with every measurement, creative, campaign management system or partner that you can imagine. Custom audiences, retargeting capabilities. But one of the things I'm most excited about Ads Manager it's just really, really different than most things in streaming is that, you can sign up for this account and upload your creative, but you can also make an interactive ad, an interactive video ad, all self-service. So that, press OK to send yourself a text, kind of thing is set up all on your own in a few minutes, and it's running. You don't have to sign an IO. You don't have to talk to anybody. It just works. And we have seen that, text is like one of the most impactful ways to move from the television to the device because open rates are just so high in text messages. And so we continue to lean into that. We've even done an integration now with Shopify. So if you're a Shopify merchant, you can connect your Shopify account and you can load your products into your ad, and you can actually check out on the TV for a Shopify product. And again, you don't have to talk to anybody to do this. It's all completely self-serve. So I'm very bullish and excited to see where this goes. It will continue to evolve. It's been an extremely fast-growing business for us. And it's touching marketers that have not been spending money in television or CTV for that matter.
Kevin, talk to us from the device perspective. How is advertising integrating into the viewer experience without disrupting it?
Yeah, no, I mean, even playing off of what Peter said, I think interactivity is incredibly important. It's important for an advertiser because they want to make sure that the user is actually watching their ad. It's incredibly important for differentiation as a user because they want to actually have agency. At Disney, we had the same research as Samsung. You see in Netflix providing the exact same data reports, which is 80 to 90% of people watching TV are watching TV with this device in their hand and they're just doom scrolling. Mm-hmm. And so how do you get that consumption back up to the TV?
Can we agree that QR codes are not it though?
100%, 100%. So I think that's where there's a lot of innovation that's happening from a product perspective of how can you get a user to feel like they are more a part of the conversation. And so we've tried a whole host of different ad formats that are getting into interactivity. We've even replaced some ads with just gaming experiences. So we have an entire team of game creators and game developers. And so we've tried to create not advert games, which are more advertising first, maybe with a little bit of gamification, but how do you start with the game first and then find a way to bring a brand in a way that feels authentic and feels exciting. The shopping capability that Peter mentioned as well, I think is a big trend that we're gonna all see with almost every single platform out there. Just interactivity in general is something that not everybody wants though. So there is the lean forward experience, there's the lean back experience. What Samsung we talk about is this lean optional interactivity where you're kind of giving the user the ability to kind of choose a pathway if they like.
That's interesting. John, are you seeing any trends related to advertising?
Yeah, I think everyone's trying to chase this idea of kind of some performance element to streaming advertising, like the QR code, bad idea. Amazon Prime, when there's the commercials and there's you can click there on your remote to sign up for health insurance, who's doing that? Nobody's doing that. And I think what's lost is the huge opportunity in streaming for brand. And because of the opportunity to pair the right creative with the right type of content. And again, in the context I was talking about earlier, one of the things we're seeing now, which is really interesting, when you look at like what kinds of ads tend to resonate and connect with consumers, historically it's always like humorous ones, right? We've seen a significant acceleration in like the popularity, but also like the brand lift impact of more emotional ads now, compared to say a year ago or 2 years ago. And so kind of pairing this sort of right type of message with what type of content is that person watching. If they're watching a show to fill that emotional void we talked about earlier, then you want to make sure that the ad you're putting in front of them is also getting to them in that same kind of emotional state. And so we're seeing in the media that we're kind of managing that sort of emotional type creative is really outperforming. Humorous people still like funny ads, but in terms of like real like sustaining brand impact, so that's an interesting trend that we're watching happen. Again, just in the broader context of where and how people feel right now.
So like performance marketers have been so focused on DR for so long, and many of them, especially those that are at large scale, they've sort of like saturated that DR audience, the one that's like ready to buy as soon as you flash an ad to them. And so they've, the brand side of this has been completely underinvested in, and they're starting to realize, oh my gosh, storytelling is like a huge part of this whole exercise, and it's a major part of the instigation of this funnel. And I think, things like TikTok brought that to the forefront. Many of the most powerful stories that have been told for their brands weren't even by their brands, and might not have been their ads, but reached audiences in this really powerful way. And television is the storytelling medium, and so we're seeing more and more of these performance-oriented folks like try to think about DR as it relates to brand and how these two things are connecting. They're bringing incrementality measurement massively to the forefront. They're finally letting go of the last click a little bit, bit by bit, and starting to think about, okay, look, there was this impression and then there was all these other things that happened. How do I think of the value of this storytelling? And when you stack it up that way and you look at it from an incrementality perspective, CTV crushes it. It does so well in impacting your total sales lift. And we see that just repeat over and over and over again.
Well, if you think about it, because one problem is there's this infinite amount of content out there. But because there's an infinite amount of content out there, the choice that I make within that universe of content says so much more about me than it did 20 years ago when there were 4 different shows I could be watching. Yep. I was in one of 4 groups. Now I'm in one of millions of possible groups, and the signal that I pervade by the choice that I make to watch is just so much stronger than it's been. Sorry.
No. And following on what Peter was saying, just when you talk about social media, user-generated content, and the impact of advertising, it's to me, it's that authenticity. A lot of the things that you describe when people get passionate about something, it's because there's a level of authenticity there, and I think that carries a lot from an advertising perspective.
We really encourage advertisers to like do some really, really low budget stuff and like try it out and use some of your influencers that people are loving and just see if they can translate through the big screen. Like, can they break the fourth wall? And it's so funny, because, we've been in this, television advertising space a long time. And anytime you tell an advertiser we're going to break the fourth wall, it's like, oh, or a director or an actor or whoever, it's like, but this is what people are used to now, and they want to feel like this person. And in fact, celebrity spokespeople don't necessarily have that much more pull than a really excited, talented, passionate influencer. When you can read the passion, that emotion that you were just talking about, it translates to conversions.
And we're even seeing it from even taking a step to the mergers and acquisitions perspective, where we're seeing traditional agencies going after, hey, look, we know that the future is a lot of these, authentic influencers, social media people, and so they're going after, maybe smaller agencies that have some scale in that category, because they know that's just, my kids are not really focused on A-list celebrities, but they know who the next social media stars are and everything like that. So it's got to fundamentally change the business and your business model if you're on the agency side as well.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to offer a perspective in terms of business models. I think, look, on TV, there have been always 2 business models that have worked. One is subscriptions and one is advertising. I think on the advertising front, to all your points, there's a lot of creativity that's coming in, and technology and digital offers a lot more interactivity. I really liked your example of the fact that people are on their phones while they're watching TV. And from an advertising perspective, where do you advertise? You advertise where the eyeballs are. And so if someone's watching TV and they're also on their phone, it really behooves advertisers to think, okay, how do I find that mix where I know maybe what the person's watching and therefore it's kind of surfacing on their phone. I know you don't like QR codes, but for now, like that is the way to kind of bridge the gap.
It gives you a signal.
It gives you a signal. But I think over time, like we're going to see a lot more signals that can bypass QR codes and really get maybe you onto the TV directly. You talked about shopping. I think, as we think about agentic behaviors that come in, I think, TV can actually maybe offer you the full shopping experience right there, and maybe you don't need to use phones. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of number one point is, yes, advertising is continuing to going to be the big thing for a business model for TVs, but how you actually advertise is changing, and I think we're going to see a lot more creativity. I think number two on the subscription side, so we're already seeing like people love to subscribe to Netflix. At YouTube also we've offered now our premium product where you don't have to see ads, but you actually subscribe to the YouTube content. I think what I've seen really interestingly over the last year is the growth of micro subscriptions. And we're seeing that in shorts, like I think a lot of you have probably watched the shorts and the drama shorts that are coming up, and people are really micro subscribing, right? They'll pay for like 5 episodes. It's very gamified. Yesterday I spoke to a broadcaster and they are thinking about micro payments. And I think that's really interesting because they were saying like, okay, you're watching a show, you love it, but then you get really annoyed about the ads. Can you just like pay $3 just for that particular show or maybe even that episode and just say, I'm going to watch this ads free, but the rest of it, I'm happy to just continue with ads. So I think in the business model side, I think those are like where the creative elements come in, even on the subscription front. And then thirdly, I think the influencer marketing is definitely a big trend that has been going on now for 4 or 5 years, so it's not new. But I think that agencies have to think through like how do all of these trends come in where I can also inherit what I used to do with the big celebrities, but then also have guerrilla marketing happening on the side with some of my influencers because the audiences are slightly different. So I think that's the way I would monetize and think about business models from those 3 angles.
You're bringing up a good point, which is moving me into my next topic, which is the next generation of viewers. We have this whole new generation of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, actually. John or Bart, both of you, how are the viewing behaviors different with these 2 generations? How is it different than mainstream audiences right now? What do you think this means for the future of streaming?
Go ahead, you can take that one first.
I think it goes back to the multitasking. And I think when you look at the next generation of how they consume content, they are not just individually consuming content and just being and locked on it. They're multitasking, they're doing other things on their phones, and quite honestly, it's competing, it's other entertainment. It's not necessarily that they're booking a flight, it's other entertainment options on their mobile device. So I think it's going to be very interesting because part of me says, does the tune and pace of storytelling need to change, right? As a content creator, do I need to change how I tell a story so that the audience remains engaged? And it's like, well, maybe I should put my phone down because I'm going to miss something, right? I keep going back, and so I need to. So that's the first question. And then the second thing I think of is like they're device agnostic. That they'll sit on their laptop and watch, like a really action-packed, show or film. Versus my generation, which would be like, I need to watch this on the big screen, or at least a big screen TV in my house, where it's like, oh, well, I'm lying in bed, so I'm bored, I might as well just watch it on my phone, and that would just never occur to me for certain types of content. So I think those 2 things are really interesting, because those are seismic shifts in how people consume content and what they're doing while they're consuming content.
Yeah, the declining attention span problem, or what I don't know if it should
I'm
call it a
guilty
problem.
of it.
It is what it is what it is, and there's no sign of it going back to any. So we don't know enough yet about Gen Alpha. So much of their consumption habits are influenced and permitted or restricted by their parents. So like we'll see what they're like when they have a bit more agency over their choices. But one can only assume it's going to lead towards more shorter form content. I think pacing, kind of tone, those kinds of things will matter. You know, there's been a really fascinating trend with Gen Z, which again I think is a bit of a macro trend, is the sort of power of nostalgia, right? They're like nostalgic. They're nostalgic for an era before they were alive, which is like also the first time we've ever seen that happen. Yeah. And again, there's lots of socio-political reasons why that's happening. But you know why Stranger Things was so powerful, right? They got to my 21 and 19-year-old like loved that show because they felt like they were transported to some simpler, I don't know, maybe not safer time. That was a weird show, but but you get the point. I mean, they've stolen all my Nirvana and Sublime T-shirts. Like they're watching Friends, and so will this next generation have that same kind of nostalgic want to watch older content? We don't know. So I think it's still a little too early to know much about Gen Alpha, other than we can fully expect their attention spans to be even shorter than Gen Z.
We always see these pendulums, though, like swing back and forth. And, like, you know, some contrarian view of that could be that whatever people in their 20s are doing now, Gen Alpha is not going to want to do.
Right. Well, that's, I think, the point. It will, yeah.
They might even say, like, I want to get into really, really dense, long-form content, you know, because that's the cool stuff now. And so I'm not predicting that.
Yeah. It's too early to tell.
Based on human dopamine hits and how that works. But it's, you know, what's fascinating to me is that we're seeing young people like watch fast TV, you know, watch these fast live channels. Yep. And that's like growing. That would never occur to me that like a Gen Z person would turn on a fast channel and let it run. Now, part of that is you see, you know, like Mr. Beast or Hot Ones or like all these big YouTube, you know, channels are launching fast channels like on Roku. And so they can just, you know, tap and watch Mr. Beast for the next 10 hours, which sounds like heaven, apparently, you know, for a lot of kids. So, I'm very fascinated to see how this shakes out. But it also seems that, like, they're kind of, I would expect them to be reacting so viscerally against the advertising. You know, like my 3-year-old, ads are not okay for my 3-year-old.
Yeah.
That is not going to work. But for like Gen Z, they're kind of like gravitating to more AVOD experiences, at least from what we're seeing in streaming.
Kevin, how is Samsung thinking about the next gen of viewers?
I mean, you brought up fast. 10 years ago, we launched Samsung TV Plus, which is a fast service. And you talk about the growth. We see the hockey stick growth curve. I mean, north of over 88 million monthly active users.
Yeah.
It's a service that's available on 630 million devices globally in 30 different countries.
Do you watch it?
I do.
I do. All right.
We have Mark Rober now, which is my kids love Mark Rober, and so his content is amazing. The Conan O'Brien channel is amazing. If any of you are fans of Conan O'Brien, we have 24/7 Conan O'Brien, and we are working on original programming. So I think what we're trying to do, we do believe that live is very critical. Creating these zeitgeist moments, these moments that are very unique that can't be replicated easily. This past year, we exclusively streamed the Jonas Brothers, which they did their 20-year reunion tour, and we had a couple of their concerts that were streamed live on Samsung TV Plus. And what was interesting about how that whole concert series unfolded is we came to the brothers with a concept that I've been working on even previously at Disney, which was how can we let the fans at home and around the world affect the show? And we created within 45 days a fan voting experience where, as you were watching the actual live concert, several times mentioned throughout the concert, the brothers said, for those of you fans around the world, you'll be able to grab your remote control and vote on what song we're going to play next. And the engagement numbers that we saw were astonishing. So much so that they actually ended up adding another show on their tour for New Year's Eve just a couple of days ago. And they demanded that we have the fan vote experience. And so the fans around the world were able to predict or vote for the song that would be played at midnight. And it was an incredible experience to see that you have this participatory viewing where I can't get that if I'm watching something that's stale and old. I can only experience that in this moment. And it created this zeitgeist experience where people were talking about it everywhere on social. The brothers have told us that all of their social feeds were trending during all of their Samsung Live events. And so those are the type of things that we're going to continue to invest in over the future. Not just these live events and new content, but how can we make it differentiated? How can we make the users at home feel like they are a part of the experience to some degree?
Yep, connected and personalized. So a last question to wrap us up, and it's a really broad one, so I apologize. Where do you see streaming in general in the next 2 to 3 years? I'll open it up to anyone who wants to answer.
So maybe I'll start. I think streaming is only going to grow. There's going to be more content, more types of content. We were just talking about fast. We were talking about short form. I think the types of content are going to be multifold. And I think from our perspective, it really depends on your mood to determine. I don't think it's going to be short form versus long form or ad-supported versus subscriptions. I think it's going to be a blend of all of it. It's really going to be about where I am, what life stage I am in, but it's also, am I in a group with my friends? And therefore, do I just want to watch a bunch of funnies or the Jonas Brothers because I'm really in the mood for music? Versus, am I alone, am I in the night, and I just want to watch a long-form movie that's really just going to help me calm down and sleep. So I think that those are going to be the moments that really determine what type of content you're going to watch. But from our perspective, like as a platform, Google TV, we want to provide access for our users to all types of content. And so that's really the goal. And then how do we make sure that people can find it quickly? How do we recommend it at the right time? I will tell you, like YouTube, of course, YouTube, it's our sister streaming service. And we see enormous appetite for YouTube Shorts on TV. Like that has been a phenomenal discovery for all of us, that people actually want to watch Shorts on TV. And so we're going to see more of that. I think with AI and the generative AI coming, what we're also finding is people are leaning in to actually creating their own content. And so, imagine like you just take a photo of your kid's furry toy, and now you create a bedtime story for them on your TV that you watch together before they go to sleep. I think those are my predictions, where we're going to see a lot more of very personalized content that you create at home. And then our goal as a streaming platform is to make sure we can surface it at the right times for you.
Great.
Yeah, I agree to all of that. I would probably add an exclamation point on AI and how AI is going to become a companion for viewing. Samsung recently announced Vision AI companion experiences, and we did it in partnership with Google Gemini. And so I think that you're going to start to see these experiences where you're not just watching the TV, but if you have a question about the particular actor or actress, or why is everybody cheering for this one football player that just came off the sidelines, or this recipe, I'm very curious about it. There's going to be a whole host of things that you're going to want to have a two-way conversation with what you're consuming. And right now, people are doing it maybe on their phone. It's a little bit lackluster. There's no contextual awareness of my phone, of what I'm watching on TV. And so there's this contextual awareness that is happening on this big screen that AI is going to unlock this whole new consumption experience that I think many streamers are going to kind of grasp onto. Certainly the operators, manufacturers are going to operate using AI.
So I agree with everything everyone said so far, and I'll even add the M&A guy in me says that there's going to be more consolidation to come. I expect there will be more consolidation. We've done studies that say the average consumer only wants to pay for 3 to 5 subscription platforms, or so I expect there to be increased consolidation. And I guess the creative side of me says that, especially like with polished user-generated content, spending more time on AI as AI capabilities expand, they become more ubiquitous throughout everybody's viewing patterns. Like you're just going to be able to create content, do things like you were saying, and I just think it's just going to take time away. And that's what I always think about, time away from the screen, because you're spending time putting your cat in a cool outfit or something like that, right? So that's where I think it's going.
I'm going to cheat and answer the question, because if I've learned anything over the last 15 years, it's that I have no idea what's going to happen 2 years from now. But I'm super fascinated about what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 months. We've got, we're coming out of a holiday season where consumers spent well beyond their means. I always say there's a fine line between resilience and recklessness, and the consumer's been walking that line. So those credit card bills, buy now, pay later bills are going to show up this month. 35% of streaming households subscribe to at least one platform in the last 3 months just to watch sports. What's the pace of churn out of those platforms going to look like in the next 2 to 3 months? We could see like a significant shakeup in terms of, or not. And if the answer is no, then we also learn a lot about the consumer and sort of where streaming lives in their like hierarchy of priorities. And we're gonna have a lot of visibility into that between now and like St. Patrick's Day. And you've got tentpole events this year. You've got Olympics coming up in a couple months. You've got a World Cup this summer. How do we see political advertising evolve this year in the midterms, and how can we see a significant ramp up of political advertising dollars across streaming? So it's going to be really fast. I have no idea what the hell the next 2 or 3 years is going to look like, but the next couple months will be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, our founder, Anthony Wood, founded Roku believing that all television is going to be streamed. And when he founded that was a completely ridiculous idea. But streaming has already eclipsed, linear television over the next 3 years. That's going to continue to happen. I don't think it'll actually be fully complete. It won't be 100% in 3 years, but we will be very, very far down that track. And as it relates to how content's going to change and what that's going to mean, especially like generative AI, I have this hopeful belief that television will be a little bit insulated from the AI creative slop, right? Like it's happening massively in social right now. I'm a big TikTok fan, but I am getting sick of it very quickly, and so many viewers are getting really, really sick of it, and the authenticity is draining out at the bottom. And so it's so crazy to think about television is just a little bit more protected from a production and fidelity, kind of a storytelling. And so maybe this will continue to be a more human storytelling effort, especially for long form content. Now for advertising, it's certainly going to get very, very specific, and we're going to have dynamic creative optimization based on audiences and their viewing habits and what it is they're in the market to purchase, and all of those kinds of things will be happening, and in video creative even, right? And in 3 years' time, I expect us to be really far down that road.
That's great. This is all the time that we have today. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. Make sure to go to Central Hall to check out all of this immersive tech we've been talking about and more. Thank you guys for attending today.
Thank you. Thank you.